bad as it looks. With chronological order. Are you still playing Nintendo? Then what you need is a Sega Dreamcast. With the Sega Dreamcast, you'll experience hours of fun and excitement with each and every game available. You'll be flabbergasted by all 128 bits. You want racing games? We've got only the best racing games on the planet that are guaranteed to make your heart palpitate. It's a Sega Dreamcast awesome? You bet it is. We've got fighting games, role-playing games, platform games, extremely unique games, more role-playing games, more fighting games, even sports games. Everything you need to be a winner. We've got great graphics, but there's more. You can go online and play with other players from around the world. That is, if you don't get disconnected. We've got the most spectacular library of games anywhere. So why mess around with that stinky Nintendo? Sega. Bring on the games. Sega Dreamcast. Available in limited quantities. May cause leakage of the anal glands. Hello and welcome to Game Sack. Now, as you've probably figured out, we're going to spend this entire episode talking about the Sega Dreamcast and its games.
The Dreamcast? I thought it was a Sega Dreamcatcher.
Dumbass, it's the Dreamcast, you know that.
Anyways, the poor Dreamcast, it was an awesome system, but it had a really, really short lifespan. And even though it had a short lifespan, it made a huge impact on the world of video games.
That it did. And with that said, let's take a closer look at the Dreamcast itself. The Sega Dreamcast launched in Japan in late November of 1998 and the U.S. on September 9th, 1999. At the time, it was the biggest U.S. console launch ever. The magazines claimed it was a 128-bit console, but the main SH4 processor was 32-bit, whereas the graphics had 128-bit processing. The software was on GD-ROMs, which were the same size as standard CDs, but had the capacity of 1.2 gigabytes. The Dreamcast made sure that you knew when it was accessing a disc because the horrible grinding sound of the laser could be heard from up to 2 miles away. The controller was a bit odd. It was modeled after the Saturn 3D control pad, but it removed 2 of the face buttons and made the remaining ones smaller. It also made the D-pad and analog stick out of a very hard and sharp plastic. The VMU accessory acted as a memory card to display primitive graphics depending on what game you were playing. You can also transfer entire Dreamcast games to the VMU to play on the go. Oh wait, just kidding, you can't do that. Of course, the system had a standard AV output, but it also had a wide array of VGA boxes made by many different manufacturers, which allowed for 480p on almost every game. The US version also came standard with a modem, but you could also get the optional broadband adapter for high-speed internet play. There were several games that took advantage of it, but unfortunately the servers no longer exist, though some games let you input your own. Many Dreamcast web browsers still work, but the internet looks pretty ugly if the sites you want to go to even load at all, though many still do. The system was discontinued less than 2 years after it was released and sold about 10.6 million units total.
Yeah, Joe, the Dreamcast definitely is an awesome system. But there's been reports of a lot of disk drive failures.
Yeah, it wasn't the most reliable system ever made, Dave, but I've got to say, it's probably a little bit more rock solid than a lot of the modern consoles are coming out with these days.
That's right.
And they did try to change the design of the system midway through in an effort to thwart piracy, but I don't think that worked too well because it didn't stop pirates for very long.
No, it didn't. That system was very easy to pirate games for. Do you think that's what killed it, Joe? Do you think?
Well, it may have had a small bit of an impact, but overall, I don't really think so. Like I said, Dreamcast only sold about 10.6 million units, and Sega was bleeding money, so that's ultimately what doomed it in. But anyway, let's take a look at the Dreamcast games and see what they've got.
Yeah, let's do it. Samba de Amigo is an amazing rhythm game by Sonic Team. The first time I played this, I didn't think much of it as the music wasn't really my taste. But after playing the game a while, I got hooked. The game is insanely fun the more you play. There are two types of play styles. You can use the maracas or just the regular old controller.
Watching Dave play with the maracas is more fun than playing the game itself.
The object of the game is to shake your maraca or time your button push the moment the blue or red balls are at the center of the donut-looking circles outside of your on-screen character. The closer you are to hitting the center of the circle, the more points you will get. As you are playing, you will be graded on how well you are or are not hitting the beats. If you do badly, your grade will drop and the background will become sad and dark. If you do great, your grade goes up and the background goes ballistic with colors and animation. It's truly a sight to see.
Yeah, they're totally spazzing out.
It's like they're on drugs or something. I love watching other people play as it gives me a chance to stare at the beautiful backgrounds. The game supports 1 or 2 players with many play options from arcade or original to challenge mode. At the time, logging online to Sega via this game would let you unlock new music already on the disc.
Oh, I hate it when DLC is already on the disc.
A lot of the music was from other Sega franchises such as Outrun, Afterburner, Rent-A-Hero, etc. In 2007, Sega let Gearbox develop a Wii version of this game along with the Samba 2000 version. Naturally, they screwed it up, which is too bad. Overall, Sega did an amazing job with this game, and it is one of my top 3 games for the Dreamcast.
Soul Calibur.
Soul Calibur was a launch game and also one of the few games that Namco released for this system. It's a sequel to Soul Edge or Soul Blade, depending on your territory. At this time, the game blew everyone away with its crisp graphics and fast action. To be honest, it still holds up very well even today. Every character has seriously scary weapons. Did you just get cut with that gigantic sword? No problem. Simply just get back up like anyone else would do. No visible flesh wounds at all. Swords and other extremely sharp objects don't actually damage the skin, so this is all perfectly reasonable. The gameplay is pretty much about mashing buttons to win, but if you like, there is some strategy to be had if you look hard enough. That doesn't mean it isn't fun, though, because it is.
It is a fun game. I really had fun with this one and got to enjoy most of the characters, though I'm not a huge fan of the newer games in the series.
Yeah, there are other modes besides the basic story mode that help add a little bit of longevity, but it's really nothing amazing. The graphics, however, are outstanding for the time. Even the intro is 100% real-time Dreamcast graphics. The music is also excellent, though it sounds pretty scratchy and harsh as it is seriously hindered by the compression they use to store the audio. Still, this is probably my favorite Soul Calibur game and a definite must-own for anyone who has a Dreamcast. I hope they made enough for all of you.
Final battle, fight!
Jack Ryan Radio!
This is Jack Ryan Radio, bitch. Hands up in your face.
Let's get scratching.
Jack Ryan Radio is another great game for the Dreamcast. This game revolves around a gang in Tokyo. They need to expand their territory by painting graffiti all over the place.
Really? That's all you need to do to acquire new territory? Sweet!
Sega's legal department did a great job of shuffling responsibility for teaching kids that it's really cool to spray paint. They added a little bit of text before the game that loads up stating that graffiti is wrong. Anyways, this is one of the earlier games that chose cell shading over traditional polygon graphics. The end result doesn't disappoint. By today's standards, the game is a bit dated, but it still does look great and is really fun to play. As you go along opening up new territories, you tag your graffiti all over the town and escape the police, etc. There's a DJ that blares a bunch of music by artists that I'm not aware of. This is awesome, as the game stays fresh and you're not playing the game to music that was in the top 40 12 years ago, which now you probably don't like. The control is really good. Spray painting large text is really easy just using motions on the analog stick. The graphics are great, and the colors in the game are really good. The soundtrack, like I said, is good, and it really fits the style of the game completely. A sequel to the game was released on the Xbox, but in my opinion, it wasn't as good as the original. There will be an HD remake coming this summer to your PSN and Xbox Live Arcade.
Jet Set Radio.
Ikaruga is a spiritual sequel to the Saturn game Radiant Silvergun. A lot of people absolutely love this game, saying it is the best thing that mankind as a whole has ever accomplished. It's a vertical shoot 'em up, and I'm not sure if it qualifies as a bullet hell shooter or not, though.
I would say it does, but, any shooter with more than 20 bullets on screen at once, I consider it pure hell.
That's because you're not very good. Anyway, pretty much like all Treasure games, this one has a gimmick to the gameplay. The gimmick here is that you can switch between light and dark ships, and your shots are accordingly light and dark. When you're in light mode, you can absorb light shots from enemies without taking any damage. Likewise, when you're in the dark mode. Dark shots will damage light enemies more than light shots will, and, of course, vice versa. It's a really cool concept, definitely. You'll find yourself switching back and forth like crazy in order to stay alive. It seems really cool at first, but I'll be honest, I grew tired of this game rather quickly. The gimmick was very fatiguing to use, and you're constantly switching back and forth to the point where it becomes very annoying. The graphics are decent, but nothing really stands out at all. There's very little color in this game, and the enemy designs look rather uninspired and generic. The music is alright, but again, nothing really noteworthy. Sorry fans, Ikaruga is a good game. It really is, but personally, I'd rather play Radiant Silvergun.
Next up is Power Stone. Capcom sure did show the Dreamcast a lot of love. This is a 1 or 2 player fighting game. It's set in stages that are littered with stuff to use as weapons like boxes, plants, benches, etc.
Litter is bad.
That's why you throw it at your enemy. Jeez. You can even uncover weapons and treasure chests. The ultimate goal of this frantic game is to get the 3 Power Stones. Once you do, your fighter becomes a super fighter for a limited period of time. During this time, you can usually use a super projectile or a very hard to dodge super attack. The game is pure chaos and very fun. The graphics are really good for the time and have aged fairly well. The control is good and the music is, the usual Capcom mediocrity. My only gripe is that this is a 2-player game. Capcom fixed this in Power Stone 2 and added 4-player support, but they really changed up the multiplayer in that version, and I felt it was for the worse.
I have a hard time keeping track of which player I am when there's so many on screen at the same time. It's just too chaotic. It's the same reason why Smash Brothers doesn't really appeal to me. Dead or Alive 2 is another early Dreamcast game, this time by Tecmo. Dead or Alive started off as a poor man's Virtua Fighter, but with this game, it's now more similar to Tekken as it's pure button mashing. But this game has well-endowed women doing most of the fighting. You can select from a bunch of characters, obviously, and even change their costumes. Dennis Rodman is even in this game, and he has one weird-ass costume. Look at that.
It's like a silver Teletubby.
The game has some sort of nonsensical story about... I have absolutely no clue what this game is about, and it really doesn't matter. The button mashing is overall pretty fun, but the game rarely presents you with a challenge of any kind.
I like all the different kinds of throws.
Yeah, and I like the multi-level stages and the lack of ring outs. And somehow I was able to pull off this move that I thought existed only in the opening demo. The graphics are excellent. There's really not much more to say about them than that. The music is pretty good too. Also, the programmers did an excellent job of hiding the loading times in this game. Usually when you win a fight, you're at the next stage, ready for the next one immediately.
This sucks if you're trying to enjoy beer because you never have time to drink it.
Dave, I think you need to cut back on that stuff.
Those were some interesting Dreamcast games, Joe. Yep. Are you going to mention Shenmue?
Well, I love Shenmue to death. It's one of my favorite games of all time, Dave. It really is. And I love Shenmue 2 as well, but of course it didn't ever come out in America on the Dreamcast. But we've already talked about Shenmue in depth, and so I'm not going to mention them in this episode.
Yeah, that's right. It was in our episode number 33, Games That Cost Polaroids and Opinions.
Yeah.
So here's a good idea. Maybe you could put a link under our video that, points people directly to episode number 33.
I have already done that, man. I am way ahead of you. It's directly below the video. You can even click on it with your mouse and just go straight and watch that. But first, stay here and watch some more Dreamcast games.
We're not done yet.
Confidential Mission is about as close to Virtua Cop as you're going to get on the Dreamcast. The manual doesn't mention it, but you can use a light gun with this game. That's because Sega never released their own light gun. In fact, I've never played this game without one. You control this sexy guy.
Who are you?
Howard Gibson. CMF secret agent.
Yep, he's almost always wearing a tuxedo. Of course, he's not very good at sneaking around, as about 1,000 bad guys are always ready to shoot you down no matter where you are. The gameplay is simple. Shoot the bad guys and don't shoot the innocent people. Also, don't get shot. Sometimes there are little mini-games to add to the variety, like shooting adhesive bullets at the vents to save yourself from poison gas, or decoupling a train car. This adds a bit of variety to the gameplay, and in a good way. Of course, being a light gun game, the screen flashes every time you pull the trigger, and it might get a bit annoying, but it's still really fun.
Yeah, it is really fun. And I usually get enough into the game where I don't even notice the screen flashing.
It's much more fun than holding a Wii controller or a PlayStation Move. The graphics are pretty good for the time, and they remind me a lot of Virtua Cop. The music definitely fits the game as well.
Virtua Tennis.
Yeah, I know I'm highlighting a tennis game, but when the tennis game is this good, you can't help but show it off. I'll admit that as I played this game for this episode, I noticed that the graphics have aged. I used to think that the player models were completely realistic. Now they look like they all have skin transplants or something.
Yeah, skin transplants from a mannequin, maybe.
Well, graphics don't...
大家聊聊农历新年。农历新年顾名思义是参照农历所定制的，由于预算非常复杂，所以大家总是在跨完年后收领农历新年之拿。为了放1周的假，你在年前疯狂加班，忙到昏天暗地。思考这一切到底都是为什么啊？就是为了钱呐！你挑了一个不会有抢匪的大白天，领出所有积蓄，带着领出来的钱去购买粮食，明明平常不喜欢的也放入购物篮，因为是过年嘛。另外还添购了新衣服、新鞋子。而传统派的则会花时间打扫家里。你去查规则上面，为什么不要在这时候大扫除？这是陋习，必须废除。除夕，新年的前一天也是一年的尾声，生怕饿死的你，赶在超市关门前又去补货一次。回来后关心妈妈的年菜听说进度如何，建议适当不够咸哦，要再加一点点。我们家的年菜没有固定，只要看起来丰盛就好。唯一固定菜色是佛跳墙，据说这道菜发明时香到隔壁和尚闻到都翻墙而来。对我们这种不爱吃的，这道菜不过就是高级的大杂烩。吃饱喝足后，看着电视节目，台湾节目看分享，转去最爱看超浮夸的央视节目。看主持人歌颂共产主义，
达到了共同富裕，创造小康社会，精准扶贫。好，
还有看着你以前最爱的艺人站上春晚舞台，高唱老歌串烧，老歌 YYDS。最后10分钟，你转回有线电视，看着曾经是世界第1高楼变成大型广告看板，一回道歉，然后不带感情的道别。从年初已经不知道讲了几次的新年。初一，新春第1天开始，3不5时就会听到鞭炮声，这些易燃物非常容易取得，路边或是文具店都有卖。鞭炮主要分2类，无害的仙女棒，第一个点燃的通常会被大家借火，等大家引燃后你们也烧完了。其他不可控的，像是冲天炮跟蝴蝶炮，引燃后爆炸路径都是不可预测的。没看过蝴蝶的都是小孩，心里想着这辈子绝对不要招惹蝴蝶。鞭炮是小孩玩的，大人在这一天会去地方庙宇想头香，祈求一整年的好运。初2回娘家，会出现几百年才见一次的亲戚，给你们叫转移转移包。因为当过晚辈，知道哪些问题很讨厌，所以我当长辈后，我都不会问那些老套的问题。小朋友小的时候都很可爱，也很容易讨好。慢慢的，他们会茁壮成为青少年后，面目全非，穿着你不懂的时尚。青春期的他们又高又冷，也不知道还可以跟他们聊什么。所以你还会玩战斗陀螺吗？还好还有麻将这种桌游可以化解很多尴尬，但我1年才玩1次，每次玩都要成绩，很神奇的一排啊！真大个2排啊！初2这天我们也开始会发红包，小朋友一律都包600，就跟几10年前我拿到的一样，没涨价过。换算下来，现在的600元价值只有486。红包走的只是一个形式，大家都知道会被妈妈拿起来哦。就像多年后我开了存折，发现我账户里面只有28元。初3跟初4，由于多日的涣散，你已经开始丧失时间感，整天追问妈妈吃什么。前几天吃过的菜肴开始以各种面貌重新投胎，原本是用佛跳墙吃到剩一点，还有点汤呢。妈妈加料后被煮成了火锅，吃到剩一点时，这时妈妈又说还有点汤呢。妈妈加入冬粉，又变成了一道粉丝煲，在家就是一直吃，而外向的人这时会开始到处玩，空气中洋溢着喜悦与病毒。此时的服务业也是操劳体力达到极限，嘴上说的新年快乐，心里却是。初5开工大吉，这时换老板开始上班，社畜陆续回到工作岗位。还没开工的社畜则是进入一种禅定状态。这几天的快乐时光都是一场梦吗？不是梦，这锅长出来的肉都是真的。你突然想起年初许下的愿望是减下5公斤，大概延到了农历年后。你再度坚定地许下了新年新希望，是减下5公斤。以上就是今天的影片，希望大家喜欢。这1年来，谢谢大家的支持，虎年也请多多关照。作为一个创作者，虽然关注的订阅数跟按赞数很肤浅，但看到浏览次数高总是高兴的。喜欢我的作品，也请不吝啬帮我按赞分享，你的支持是我创作的动力。最后不免俗，再祝大家一次新年快乐！虎年也祝各位赞助小可爱吉祥如意，大家赚大钱发大财。今年是鬼梦的小女孩，牛女儿陈照长秋，这回开飞机，猪猪皮皮都是爱哭美56，妈妈爱唱古风歌的奇奇 VV 蛋，国宝猪猪想要个好帅哥的比喻超大的老师，大到猪猪也迷路。阿里，我在雅木，还有光小胖的是学生工作比起来有一点我在这里学成的老妈，WF87的输入模式怪孩子，生命之世不可爱的可传的，还年纪超成功真小瑞瑞，还有的小家居没在另外教人。 家先聊聊我在健身房的经验。大概在6、7年前，健身的风气突然就兴盛起来。以前不吃饭只喝下午茶的网美，现在都要健身完再去喝下午茶。而网帅则是要在疯狂健身后拍一张精油牌照片。在这般风气之下，我也开始觉得运动是一件重要的事。我当然知道运动有不花钱的方法，像是去永国小操场或是公园跑步都可以。说到在社区运动，我最讨厌遇到很臭的跑步狂，他们跑步的风都很臭，但速度上你又跑不赢他。你跑1圈，他可以跑3圈，你就一直被臭。一开始我也是很怠惰，后来我想说，如果花了钱，就会逼自己运动了吧，的心态报名了健身房。第一次踏入健身房，我其实不知道要怎么穿，也没有想很多，我就穿了一件宽松的 T 恤配高中运动裤，还怕流小汗，搭配了运动袜。唯一用心的是，我买了运动内衣。所谓的运动内衣，就像热压三明治机一样，塞多少料都能被压平，就不被压扁就不会乱晃。健身房是为了让人体态一个完。
Metermanis.
菲菲你好，菲菲以前拍过《原始代人》吗？哦，网络上第一次来现场，是张谁？
Holy shit.
Today is that they're all very English friendly for being games that never left you. And you'll begin to wonder. Next, there's Great Battle 2, The Last Fighter Twin, released a year and a half later, and this time around our heroes are in a traditional beat 'em up. You need a kick, a punch, and Y to jump, which is a little unusual, but whatever, it's a beat 'em up. It's not like this is going to be all that complicated. There's even a fourth character you can play as from here on out, a fellow by the name of Fighter Roar, otherwise known as Kota Azuma. This time
啊，这个音乐，这个音乐。992. 992, March 27th. 992, March 27th. Hehehe 超白痴的。992. Hehehe
终于出院了，回到家了。嗨，大家好，我是平妹。在上集我们提到了我决定去动痔疮手术的过程，这次来聊聊术后复原的故事。手术后2小时，麻醉退去，疼痛感越来越明显，直到无法忽视它。此时，另一位大姐刚动完手术，跟我入住同一间病房。大姐烟瘾很重，即使动了痔疮手术，每隔几小时也坚持要出去抽烟。这样的生活习惯难怪会痔疮啊。 之前护理师有跟我们叮咛，要准备术后的辅具，一个迷你橡皮圈跟一个大水盆，每天要坐浴舒缓伤口。所以每天下午我跟大姐就会拿着橡皮圈一起去专门的盥洗室。也许在另一个平行时空，我们是好朋友，正在水上乐园拍滑水道。坐浴的空间就像一般的盥洗室，一人一小间，只是里面多了一个铁架，让你放大水盆。水盆里放温水，再把橡皮圈放上去，人坐在橡皮圈上扶着，温水让伤口舒服不少。每天坐浴完要擦药，护理师会帮你擦。只是那个姿势真的很伤人自尊，简直就像中古世纪的新剧一样。我再次陷入解离状态，我的屁股不是我，我也不是我的屁股。之前护理师还有吩咐，想大便的时候千万不能忍，不然大便在肠子里会变硬，变硬就大不出来，大不出来要再动一次手术。那是我人生中少数痛到快昏过去的经验。想大便多少要用点力，但又不能太用力，伤口会痛。好几次我大到哭出来，好不容易到了匝道口，不得不让它通过石锥痛。大完便伤口痛，又要再去坐浴。有大出来吗？我跟大姐一天会经历好几次这样的生死关头。除了肉体上的疼痛，我内心也很煎熬。我们的病房是最边间，我一开始也没多想，但事后觉得那里可能真的很偏。我们的病房格局是这样，我离门口比较近，大姐则是靠窗。从入住第一晚我就觉得不对劲，大概到了半夜1、2点就会出现奇怪的脚步声，那是穿着拖鞋的脚步声，慢慢拖行向我靠近。我一开始也觉得没什么，而且我也没那种体质。可是那脚步声真的很清楚。奇怪的是，不知道为什么每次脚步声到我床位前都会停止，发生的频率大概1小时就一次，让我越来越确定是阿飘。之后我就开始像恐怖片会出现的配角。隔天我试探性的问大姐有没有听到什么脚步声，没事，为了不要吓到别人，我只好装没事，但我还是忍不住也问了护士。
没有哎，怎么了吗？
没事，我完全就像个制造悬疑气氛的疯子。第2晚脚步声也出现了，我索性把帘子层拉上，这一拉不得了，想象空间更大了。我好怕会在帘子下看到。当我拉到不敢再把帘子打开，好怕看到是一个老头。
Paper Boy，
情况好转是第3晚，
Paper Boy，
大妈可能80、90岁，那天脚步声一次都没出现。我第一次这么爱大喊人的婆妈，那晚我睡得很熟。第4天我终于出院了。回到家的日子，我依然只能趴着，或是在厕所里拍不然就是坐在橡皮圈上看书。
Hello and welcome to GameSec. This time around we're taking a look at another underrated system, and this time it's the Nintendo GameCube.
That's right, Joe. A lot of people shun the GameCube in favor of the PlayStation 2 and even the Xbox. But the system in actuality has a lot of great exclusive titles.
It really does.
And it even has the awesome Game Boy adapter.
Yeah, that's really awesome. It is. Anyway, before we look at the games, we're going to take a look at the system itself. The Nintendo GameCube was launched in North America on November 18th, 2001, just 3 days after the launch of the original Xbox. The console's name was very descriptive because that's exactly what it was, a cube that played games. It also had a nifty carrying handle. On the back of the system were connections for power, analog audio and video, as well as digital audio and video, though the digital port was only ever used for video, requiring you to use both jacks simultaneously, which was definitely not cool. The console supported progressive scan and widescreen video. Nintendo eventually did away with this jack entirely on late model GameCubes. It was the first Nintendo system to use optical discs as the main method for game delivery, though they went with small discs with very low capacity, only about 1.4 gigabytes. That meant that games often had to be split up over multiple discs, or that features from multi-platform games had to be removed from the GameCube version. The standard controller looks very strange at first, offering a rather bizarre but very comfortable button layout, and perhaps the best analog stick ever for any game system. The GameCube would eventually get add-ons like a modem, broadband adapter, and a Game Boy player which let you play Game Boy Advance games on your TV. The online capabilities of the system were barely touched upon, however, as Nintendo officially stated that gamers did not want to play games online. Instead, they focused on what they called connectivity, where you attached a Game Boy Advance player to the controller ports, and each player could see his or her own screen on the GBA. The system was supported until early 2007 and sold 22 million units, more than twice as much as the Sega Dreamcast. And it also should be noted that the CAV formatting of the Nintendo GameCube discs also helped load times to be pretty fast.
Joe, just what the hell is CAV? I mean, you act like everybody's just supposed to know what that means.
They don't?
No, of course not. Eh?
Well, CAV stands for constant angular velocity, which means the disc always spins at the same speed no matter what position the laser's in, kind of like the old laser discs, which only had a half-hour video per side. But it really helps the seek times and all that stuff.
That is very interesting. You know, another fun fact that I probably will never remember again. Yeah. So, do we have any games that we're going to take a look at?
Yeah, why don't you start out? What do you got for us?
I'm going to show 3 of the finest. First up is Luigi's Mansion. Alright, so the GameCube launched and there was no Mario title, to the dismay of hundreds of fans.
You know, I bet if they did have a Mario title at launch, the system would probably be a lot more popular.
Sadly, we will never know. Nintendo decided that it was time for Luigi to have a chance at glory and gave us Luigi's Mansion. It's not a typical platform game that people were accustomed to with the new Nintendo system. This time around, Luigi has to save Mario, who was trapped in this mansion by the same scheme that got Luigi there. Anyways, you play Luigi's Mansion by going room to room solving riddles. You use your Game Boy Horror to search for ghosts and lock onto their beating heart.
Ghosts don't have beating hearts, Dave. If they did, they wouldn't be ghosts.
They do. Look at the Game Boy Horror. There's a beating heart right there. Here you'll get a clue of what you need to do to be able to see the ghost and suck it up with your Poltergust 3000 Ghost Vacuum. Once you collect some of the bigger ghosts, you will get a key which will open up new parts of the mansion to explore and repeat the process again. The controls in the game are really good once you get used to them. The music is also good for the game. It's not creepy by any means, nor are the graphics, which are way more cute than scary. Remember, this is Nintendo.
Exactly. We've got kids to think about here.
I think it's split right down the middle on people who like this game and people who don't. I, for one, do like it a lot and had a great time with this game. It was and is a game that's very unique. I'm highly anticipating the sequel that's coming out for the 3DS.
Oh.
And here is Super Smash Bros. Melee. What game system is complete without fighting games? None of them.
CDI didn't have any fighting games, and look how impressive that thing was.
You are so right. Granted, the GameCube never saw any Street Fighter, King of Fighters, or Dead or Alive, but that doesn't mean it didn't have anything fun. Instead, it had the biggest fanboy's fantasy come true. Smash Bros. Melee pits characters from all across Nintendo's franchises against each other in a 4-player battle royale. Actually, this is the best part when you get 3 of your Nintendo fanboy friends together and you spend hours playing this game like it's just 5 minutes. Even if you're on your own, you can play this game because there's so much content that it would be very hard for you to get bored. In single player, you can play the adventure mode, which has some platforming and all-out battles like defeating a certain amount of Yoshis before you can progress. Or you can play the 4-player Melee with 3 CPU characters. The control in the game is good, and the fighting is far from deep. I mean, you have a block button, punch button, and a secondary attack button.
A block button? What is this, Mortal Kombat?
Oh, God, no. While it's far from difficult, it's a true button masher that's very fun. Back to fanboy stuff. This game is loaded with it. Each stage is taken from a different Nintendo franchise. The music is remixed awesomeness from Nintendo games. HAL Labs has got to be my favorite second-party developer. Everything they seem to put out is pure gold. And what would a GameCube episode be without a mention of Metroid Prime? When it was first announced as an FPS game, I had mixed feelings. Firstly, I love the Metroid series, so naturally I was very happy to hear this.
I love Metroid, so I was very sad to hear this.
Secondly, at the time, I wasn't a fan of FPS, and I thought this would never work. How can you have a platforming, puzzle-solving game as an FPS? Well, I was very pleasantly surprised by the outcome. Metroid Prime is a great game all around. Retro Studios did an amazing job with the Metroid franchise. They made it all fit together so nicely that I was immersed in the game from the first couple of minutes of play. The controls took a bit to get used to, but it ended up making perfect sense. The world created in this game is very deep. The graphics are very good for the GameCube, and the music is outstanding. It's a mix of classic Metroid melodies and some atmospheric, minimalistic awesomeness. Throughout the game, you are required to scan objects to open things up and get further in the game. If I remember correctly, a lot of fans complained that this slowed the game down a lot. I myself liked it very much.
That's because of your collector mentality. Must scan everything.
Oh, and I did. I love scanning all objects possible to learn about the surroundings. Scanning fallen pirates to learn how they met their demise. Scanning bosses to figure out their weak spots. It all made for a very inclusive experience that feels very much like Metroid. Of course, Metroid Prime 2 came and was good, but not as good as the first one. A must-have for any Nintendo fan.
Yeah, but Super Metroid is still the apex of the series to this day, in my opinion.
But it's not on the GameCube. And of course, you can get the Metroid Prime trilogy on the Wii. But it's not very common, so be prepared to spend some big bucks for it.
Yeah, but they did make them all control like Metroid Prime 3.
Which is actually really nice.
Yeah.
That was pretty good control.
Yeah.
So, all right, Joe, what games have you chosen to talk about?
Well, how can I just show you?
It's a great idea.
Rogue Leader, aka Rogue Squadron 2, was a launch game for the GameCube. It covered the same time span that all three original movies take place in.
You also get to control a bunch of ships you really don't care about either. All I really want to control is an X-Wing and the Millennium Falcon.
I hear you on that. Many scenes from the original trilogy are here, and during those scenes you can control Luke Skywalker. There are other scenes that take place elsewhere in which you control some other Yahoo. The game is very challenging and also quite rewarding. Now, I've heard it said that this game pushes the GameCube to its limits graphically. You know, I don't know about that, but the graphics are very good.
They are good graphics. I was pretty impressed when I first played this game.
The sound is also well done with good imitations of most of the real characters and some good fake surround thanks to Dolby Pro Logic 2. Sometimes it's hard to spot the TIE fighters that you need to destroy because they blend in with everything else and you really can't see them on the map due to all of the clutter.
A fun game, but my enthusiasm for the Star Wars universe has seriously dropped off, so I really don't care for the storyline.
Wave Race Blue Storm is another launch game for the system. I loved Wave Race 64 on the Nintendo 64.
Oh, you're not the only one.
It was one of my absolute favorite games for that system, and I couldn't wait for a high-powered sequel. So how'd this one turn out? Well, Nintendo handed it off to Western developers, and they did a decent job. The water looks really cool, and sometimes it really feels like you're smacking the waves as you speed past. The control is pretty tough, and I don't think it controls anywhere near as well as Wave Race 64, but it's still quite manageable for the most part.
I also found the controls a little lacking. The N64 game controls so nicely.
It really did. The music is good in a few spots, but overall, it's nothing that'll blow you away. One thing Wave Race 64 had was an announcer who was extremely happy. The announcer here in Blue Storm seems a little less thrilled to be here.
Plus, the character choices here are also lacking. I never found any of them interesting. I hate when game companies try to give a polygon character 2. It just doesn't work.
amazing racing game. Nintendo knew that they could never make the game as awesome as it needed to be, so they handed it to the only ones who could, Sega. That's right, only Sega had the skill to make a proper Nintendo game.
Oh, jeez. I have mixed feelings about this statement, Joe. I think Nintendo could have made it very good, but I have to give credit to Sega. They did an excellent job here.
Presented in widescreen, this game is frustratingly intense. That's right, I said frustrating. This game is absolutely punishing to all but the most dedicated players.
Yeah, frustrating is a good word. It's super hard to win races on upper levels, even when you feel you've had a perfect race.
Judging by the graphics, this game takes place a few years in the future, and in the future, games always run at 60 frames per second. Sega knew how to use the GameCube hardware better than Nintendo did. In fact, Nintendo never made a 16:9 widescreen game for the system ever. They were weak. The music is great as well, though sometimes it's